So very recently we picked up a copy of Gloomhaven. We got it for a pretty decent price, but it made me start thinking about the cost of board games and the overall per person per hour cost. Because when you're thinking about like entertainment, you kind of, at least the people I've talked to, have equated most everything to going to see a movie. You go to see a movie for 2 hours, it's about $7 an hour per person, maybe. It's, a $14 movie or something like that, and that's not including the food or anything like that. Isn't terrible. A lot of people kind of think it's bad, especially when you can rent a movie for less than that, and it becomes, if you rent a movie for $5 and 5 people watch it, then it's worth 50 cents per hour per person. Like it's far cheaper. And that's where a lot of people start to think that movies are really expensive. But board games can appear to be just as expensive when it's a $200 board game. I've got a couple other examples over here. This is an example of another $200 game that could see quite a bit of plays, but we're starting to think about these plays in terms of hours per person. So Cthulhu Wars is $200 MSRP. This is an area control game that's got gigantic miniatures on it. And I can show you the gigantic miniatures right now. The big selling point for this game is not just that it's got really cool asymmetrical play or very well designed factions or a ton of expansions. It's got a bunch of expansions. It's the fact that it's got these really massive, very cool miniatures for Cthulhu, Hastur, Nyarlathotep, and the Black Goat. Where is she? We'll put it right up here. These things are humongous. And they're really cool. Oh no, I got the king in yellow too, for yellow sign. Let's sit him on top of Hastur there, like a little hat. So we've got these really amazing miniatures, and a lot of time and effort and art production has gone into these, which is what really creates the $200 game that we have in front of us. And you can't deny that it's good in its own way, but does it have to be $200? A lot of people say. Does it have to be? Probably not. Would it be a totally different game if it wasn't $200? Absolutely. And so there we go. And so in some ways you think it could be that movie rental. It could be a $50 game. I've got a $50 game that plays in about the same amount of time. And this plays 5 players. Well, it's not $50, but let's just imagine it's about $50 if you get it, for cheap. And we've gotten this to the table like 9, maybe 10 times, which means that for 5 players at $50, if your playthrough is 1 hour, which we all know Fury of Dracula can last pretty long, that means $10 per person for your first play, and then $5 per person each play if you've played it twice. So for 10, it ends up being like $1 per person per play. I think that's right. In any event, Cthulhu Wars it very easily could be that game that was only $50 and has asymmetrical area control, but it's not. And the reason we want this $200 version is because the art direction is so good and the models are so good, and it's worth that much because we want it almost for dual purposes in some cases. We want to be able to paint the minis, or we want to use the minis in a different game or an RPG or something like that. And so this game wouldn't be this game if you made it for less. You could still make it for less if it was a different game. I think a lot of people say that Gloomhaven, well, at least I've heard it said a couple of times, Gloomhaven could be a poor man's Kingdom Death Monster. That's hardly a poor man's Kingdom Death Monster when this is still like $200 and Kingdom Death is like $450, I think. No, you could spend that much on add-ons and stuff for Gloomhaven, I think. And granted, Cthulhu Wars' add-ons could rack up to around like $1,300 if you really wanted to go that far, go that deep. But each one does include those gigantic miniatures, those really awesome rules, and really good art design. In Gloomhaven, you've got all these different monsters, and I went ahead and just bagged each monster in its own baggie so that I could find it later. This does not come with baggies normally. But the big money sink is in this guy right here. It's the scenarios. There's 95 scenarios in here, and each one is, painstakingly written out as a, as a storyline for your campaign. So, is this the same quality as Kingdom Death Monster? No. Kingdom Death Monster has amazing miniatures. It has really fine-tuned art and is really the top end for an RPG in a box. But Gloomhaven is doing something great, which is bringing the price point down, allowing us to experience something just as good for a fraction of the price. This kind of goes back to my movie analogy. Is going to see a movie worth it when you can rent it a few months later? Now, there's a lot of different things that go into that. Do you want to see it opening night? Do you have to see it opening night? Are you willing to wait? Are you willing to see it in your house, or do you want the movie theater experience? Is that going to really change much? Now, it's the same exact content, whether you view it at a movie theater or view it in your home, and this is clearly different content from a game like Cthulhu Wars or Kingdom Death, but you're still trying to look at things through the lens of how much am I spending for the amount of entertainment I can get. And when it comes to board games, you're spending far less per hour, assuming you can get it to the table at least 5 times, than for anything else, for any other type of entertainment. If I can get this $200 game, actually, we got it for cheaper. We got it for about $150. If I can get this game to the table for 3 friends, for me and 2 friends, for 1 hour, that means we each paid $50 an hour to play this game, to enjoy it. If we play it for 2 hours, it's $25 per person per hour. 3 hours, it becomes $12.50. It's already cheaper than a movie at that point, and we only played it 3 times. And this is really just jam-packed full of stuff. And we're still only accepting price points of about $200 to maybe $400 for board games. There's not a game out there anyone's willing to pay $500 or $600 or $700 for, unless it's incremental in getting, all of the expansions perhaps. But it's still not that common to see like an initial ask of so much money when board games still provide the best bang for your buck. Of course, I'm not talking to collectors who want to own a game just to own it, or who think, 20 years later, I might still pull it back out, because let's be honest, you're probably not going to. And most games only see the table about 8 to 12 times, depending on if it's like a legacy or a campaign game or something like that. I can tell you right now, we haven't gotten Cthulhu Wars to the table more than 5 times. We haven't gotten Gloomhaven to the table yet for more than 3 hours. Fury of Dracula, though, we did get to the table. We have gotten it to the table about 9 times, which means it's wildly worth its ask. We've gotten certain games to the table much faster. Some, have, I'm looking over at my games. One of them's like Werewolf. We've played Werewolf like 50 times with like 20 players at a time sometimes. We've played Secret Hitler 150 times with 10 players each. We've played, games like, we played Charterstone 12 times. We've played, where are the rest of my board? Oh, Scythe. We've played Scythe like 10 times already, and some of those were 7-player games, and so they were absolutely worth the ask. The final question would be, what's the ultimate price point going to be for you, assuming you can get games to the table? And the alternate point, if you can't get a game to a table, why are you considering buying it if you know you can't get it to the table? Think about it like that. I'm going to go play some more Gloomhaven because honestly, I really love it. And thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, feel free to hit that subscribe button right down there and hit that bell icon so you can be notified for our next video.